All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Some of you guys were on the tour with me, but I'm Darren Toby, Superintendent, Broken Bow Public Schools. Up here on my left, I have Tom Osmond. Tom is the President of our Board of Education. Pam Holcomb also on the board, Tim Chancellor on the board, and Chris Smith, a volunteer from the community that's worked on some of our committees. Tobin Buchanan from First National Capital Markets, Jacob Sertich from Wilkins Architect and Design, Steve Thiel and Dan Ritter are both from Houseman Construction. So a little bit of how tonight will work. We have a presentation that we'll walk through. Each one of our slides talk about our process, how we got to where we are, and then at the end, really take any questions that you guys would have for us as we move forward here on the project. But just like the tour, we'll point out some things that we've done or in the process and how we got to this point and why we decided to do what we did with that. So with that, am I up first? All right, let's hit that baby. Kind of did the welcome introductions, we'll hit the process. So I'll let Tom talk to you a little bit about our process, but if you're on the tour, we talked a little bit about when I came here 4 years ago, we really tried to be transparent with our finances here at the school. So one thing I felt like we could build trust with the community if we were honest with them, if we were transparent with them, if we went out in the public and told people what we're doing with their tax dollars. So we've done a pretty good job with that, in my opinion, on all of our accounts. The one account that we've struggled on the most has been, what do we do with our facilities? We have some money that we have laying in our facilities account. We have a bond that we're potentially going to pay off here early. What do we want this to look like? What do we want our school to look like here in the next 5 to 8 years? So we've really tried to work on those kind of conversations over the past couple years when it comes to facilities. We've done a great job in getting our transportation accounts set up, our curriculum accounts, all those different things. We've done a pretty good job. It's the one that we've struggled on is facilities. And one of the reasons we've struggled so much is how much money do you put into an aging building that potentially isn't going to give you what you want out of it. So that's kind of how this all began, and I'll let Tom kind of talk on the process of how we got committees and who we invited, and then Chris will jump in here as Chris was a part of some of the committees that made up this process.
So you may wonder, how do you get from 4 years ago, if you'd have told me I'd been up here telling you that we're going to be voting for a bond issue November 9th, I said there would be no way that would ever happen. And how do we go from that to actually up here me telling you that? And so, and I'll speak from a board perspective, but like Darren said, we hired him. We had some money saved back, didn't really have a plan for it. He put the plan together, and facilities was one that we struggled with. So we, in November of 19, we hired Wilkins to do a facility audit. And in May of that year, he came back, and it was a $8 to $10 million project to get this middle school, high school up to code. And it just, like you said, it didn't seem like that was a good way to spend our money to update an old building. And where we're going to get what we wanted. We know we were wanting to figure out what to do with the shop. We wanted improvements there. We had performing arts. There's some things there. So with that, the board talked and worked around, and Mr. Toby came up planned. And so in January of 21, we put together groups. He asked us each to get some members together, get a community, because we didn't want it to be a board project, right? We wanted it to be community driven. So we got community members, and then the groups came together. Each group had toured their part, and then we all came together and came up with a plan, and that's what you're seeing tonight. And I think that's all from my perspective, how this process transpired. Oh, sure. So the 5 groups, we had fine arts, CTE, career and technical education, your shop, woods, that, athletics, science, and ag, FFA kind of deal. And so those were the groups that we thought where we wanted to put our money and what was important to this community.
Can you guys stand in the light when you're talking?
Sure.
See the shadow, just a silhouette there.
Just get me?
Yes.
All right, so I was one of the approximately, and that slide moved, but there was approximately about 40 or 50 community members. We were made up of folks that had kids in the school systems, teachers that were currently in the school system, former retired teachers, business owners. We had ranchers, farmers, landowners. We had one person that is actually a teacher at another community. We had people who grew up in other school systems in the county, but are now maybe living here in Broken Bow and have students in there. So we really did have a broad spectrum of people to kind of go through and look at this. I ended up in one of the groups that toured through and looked at like the shops, the metals, and things like that. Each group was doing the same thing that our group did. So we had to kind of learn about what's needed today. Obviously, the school buildings, things like that were built. This is a 1938 building. High schools were built in the 60s, 1968. So education back in those days was different than what it is right now. It's different than what it was almost 30 years ago when I graduated. I quickly learned in the shop, they don't have room. Those were designed with maybe room for 8, 10 students. And now they have 20, 30 kids that may want to take some of the classes. Some of the things that they're doing with welding, the equipment wasn't right, there weren't exhaust systems, things like that. And each group identified things. In our group, one of the community members said, the stuff that we have here in Broken Bow is worse than what he had in Myrna 20 years ago when he graduated. And so that kind of threw up some red flags for us. So we did identify those things. Kind of everybody got back together, kind of gave their wish list, things like that. We worked with folks that came, and they brought a design to us. And it was a really good design and bigger than what you're seeing here today. So it had more bells, more whistles, things like that. And as a group, we tried to identify, okay, this was excessive. Or maybe we could do this a little bit less. Let's try to see if we can save. Let's try to bring this money down. It's still a big price tag right now, but we were able to shave quite a bit off of that and hopefully come up with a plan that worked well for what the teachers said that they needed now, what we kind of learned from our tours, and then also give a chance that we could expand and grow or modify as education changes in the future. You got a wireless? Okay.
Turn off, you just gotta lay it down.
Testing. Can you hear me okay? And is this enough light right here? Perfect. Is that okay? Okay. Well, first off, again, my name is Jacob Surdich, and I'm I'm managing principal of Wilkins Architecture Design Planning, and we're located in Kearney. And I'm very, very excited to be here tonight. I'm very excited to be a part of this process with the school district and with the community here. I have to tell you, and I know all you know this already, but you have a fantastic board and great administration led by Mr. Toby. They've really been just incredible to work with throughout this whole process here, and it truly has been a very collaborative process. I know others have talked about it a little bit here at the meeting here already tonight here, but we went through a very methodical process and a very collaborative process with community involvement to bring this design here tonight, and the one that we've put out here to the public, the one that you'll be voting on. This has all been a part of the community process. This is what I would say is a community design. It's not necessarily my design, but it's a true collaborative design that we're going to be showing you here tonight and that you'll be voting on in a few days. So I just want to say that. I also want to say if there's any of those community members that were a part of that process. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be a part of that process. It definitely was very needed for us to be able to bring this plan to you here tonight and to the voters. So I'll be showing you the concept plan that we've put together along with some renderings. We've also put together a 3D animation, kind of a fly around that'll take you around what this site will look like should the bond issue pass a couple of years from now. And then lastly, I'll wrap it up with talking about how much, what the total cost is, projected cost is for the project. So here now is that concept plan that the community groups have put together and voted on. I would tell you just off the top here that this is a concept plan, and so as such, with the concept plan, we take things as far as we can take them prior to the bond issue. We have to put together enough information so that our colleagues, the construction manager, Houseman Construction, so they had enough information to put together a cost estimate for the proposed project. But in terms of like figuring out every last detail of the project, that'll be to come in the final design phase after the bond election. So just wanted to let you know that, you know, we certainly, again, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ground that we've covered, but we still have quite a bit of ground to cover in that final design phase. So as was mentioned earlier, this process started with a facilities assessment, and so that was a very thorough assessment. I think I've been in every single room, including there's a kind of a dungeon, a deep boiler room just down the hallway there. I've been in there. It'd probably be good for a haunted house or something like that with Halloween. But anyways, so out of that process, out of that assessment, there were a long list of needs that were identified as far as with the facilities, whether it's accessibility issues, handicap accessibility issues, whether it's heating and cooling issues, whether it's ventilation issues, whether it's space issues for the different programs. All those were identified in this facilities assessment, and I think what you're going to find here with this concept plan is that we're going to address as many of those items identified in that assessment, as many of those items as we possibly can address with this project here. So one of those that I might just start off here with is that was kind of mentioned by a lot of different people. And I've heard this even from people that don't live here in the community. As far as, you know, if you come to an event here or something like that, nobody's quite sure where exactly is the main entrance to Broken Bow High School. And you know, is it on the east side by the football field? Is it over here behind us on the west side at the middle school entrance? Is it on the north or south? So anyways, but as you'll see here when I show you that concept rendering, there'll be a very readily identifiable main entrance, a very prominent main entrance that'll be a part of all this here. That'll serve as certainly, of course, the main entrance. And so as you come in, that main entrance will be facing 9th and C. So 9th, of course, north-south, and C, east-west there along the bottom part of the screen there. So this will be the main entrance there off of that intersection. Of course, right across the street from that, we're looking at then relocating the bus barn so that we can provide some parking there that would be close to the main entrance. So will be a new parking lot here then right across the street from that main entrance. So as you come in, right to the left would be the new central office area. So Mr. Toby's office, bookkeeper, central office staff, and then to the right, that would be the high school office there. And then as you come in, there'll be this central lobby space there that will serve as the gathering space between the two main assembly venues there. This would be to the right, then would be the new competition gym, which will be seat a little over 1,600. there in that new gym. And then off to the left would be a new auditorium, a new dedicated auditorium. We're looking at seating anywhere from 650 to 700 in that range there. Again, that's something that we'll fine-tune that and get the exact seating count as we get into the final design. But a full performance stage there with all of the rigging and lighting, sound, all of that you would come to expect with a new auditorium venue, a first-class venue, such as what we would be proposing here. I think I mentioned it earlier. One in the group here asked about the acoustics and the sound system. So we'll have an acoustics engineer that works with us that will make sure that we have the acoustics properly tuned for the space as we get the design underway for the auditorium there. So as far as the rest, then moving on to the building, you see this area up here. I definitely want to highlight that space because that would be the new shop area. Career and technical education is what the current fancy term is, if you will, for those spaces. But there's a lot that goes on in there, and that was one of the things that was identified with that facilities assessment as far as those spaces that are currently lacking and not up to current standards would be that career and technical education area. So that'll include an area, an ag lab. There would be metals, woods. There would be clean classrooms associated with each one of those there, and of course there would be plenty of space then for projects, for the larger class sizes. Because again, we want to make sure that we're designing a facility here that for those students that maybe aren't necessarily interested in going to UNL or something like that. We want to make sure that we're providing facilities here that will enable you to, and the teachers, the staff, to be able to equip these students to go right out into the workforce. And certainly, I know we heard that when we had the community groups, as far as the feedback from some of the business leaders, as far as we need to make sure that we're training kids that can go right into the workforce and hopefully help our businesses out. And come to work for us, and then in turn, hopefully, again, just raise up the community and making sure that Broken Bow continues to be a very vibrant and viable community and a great place to live. So some other things on the plan here I want to highlight for you. So right to the right here of the auditorium would be the new rehearsal spaces for band and vocal music. And then a little bit further down from that, there'd be a new media center. And then I know a lot of people have asked me, well, all right, so if you're going to be demolishing or eliminating the 1938 building, how are you going to account for all those classrooms? Well, the easy answer, I guess, to that is the quick answer is as we pull different program spaces out of the 68 building. So again, we'll be pulling, band's going to be pulled out of there, vocal music will be pulled out of there, wood shop's going to be pulled out of there, metals is going to be pulled out of there. That frees up a number of spaces within that building, which will then renovate and convert into new spaces. And one of those I want to highlight in particular are the new science labs. So I mentioned the woods area, the current woods area being vacated. The current vocal music area, which is right there, that being vacated. So in that area there, we'll convert that area into the new science labs, because currently the science labs are right here in the heart of the building. No natural daylighting or anything like that. We move them over here on the east side. We'll be able to give them, by putting in some windows, we'll be able to bring in natural daylight for those new science labs. So with all of that, with the programs moving out and then repurposing of existing program spaces in that building, we'll actually end up, depending on how you want to quantify instructional spaces, we'll end up with a net gain of anywhere from 1 to 3 additional instructional spaces then from what you have today with this plan here, and certainly it makes more efficient use of the available property that the school district has. Of course, the 38 building here it's offset quite a bit, set back from the from 9th, so we'll make better use of this property here. And again, this is a very solid structure here and everything like that, the 38 building, but the programs, the spaces in here were just not really designed and are not suited for spaces such as the CTE and some of the other spaces that we need for you to be able to deliver effective curriculum and program in the coming years here for the school district. So let me go now to these renderings. Again, conceptual renderings, so things could change a little bit, but this is the vision that's been cast by the community group that we've assisted with here with that process. And so there's that main entrance there that I mentioned off of 9th and C. Again, gives an opportunity to promote the school spirit and the branding with the broken bow and the logo and everything like that. And as far as materials, we'll definitely want to make sure that we're using materials that help tie the addition back to the 68 building in terms of like the brick and everything like that, making sure that we're complementing and we're working with the existing materials on the existing building to remain. There we go. So this is our conceptual image of that career and technical education area. This here you see is kind of the backstage space for the auditorium there on the right of the screen. This would be the new career and technical education area with the overhead doors there going into each one of the new lab spaces there. Here now is a view. So when you come in that main entrance there, where you see the logo and everything like that, you go in underneath the logo and come in, and this is the view that you'd see. So I mentioned, so off to the right there, you'd see the new competition gym there, seating on 3 sides, and then over to the left here would be the new auditorium or performing arts center there, and then just beyond there you'd go on to the rest of the school there. So again, lots of things we're envisioning a lot of things could be able to take place in this new lobby and common space there, whether it's open dinners, things of that nature. Am I going out here? Okay. I'll just try to talk really loud here. We need some new batteries like that, but moving on to the next slide here. Oh yeah, okay.
Now it's on.
Thank you, Tom. Actually, I know what it was. I think Mr. Toby, that was my sign that I'm going over my time here, so I'll hustle it up here a little bit. So again, this is our conceptual rendering here of looking into one of the lab spaces there. I hope I don't offend anybody with the green combine. We kind of debated that in the office. Should that be green or red or yellow or whatever color out there? So we went with green. Looking at one of the new science labs there on the east side of the building, again with improved ventilation, everything like that, and the latest technology for lab spaces. Here now is that 3D fly around that I mentioned. We'll get going here. So this is again heading northward there on 9th. You can see the main entrance and the new central office area. I want to highlight this space right here. This is just outside of the new auditorium, and what we're thinking is that'll be a great gallery space for 2D and 3D art, which there's not really, I would say, a great gallery space today in the existing building, but we'll have a very nice area for displaying artwork, student artwork there next to the auditorium. Mentioned the CTE area. There's the wrestling building. And sometimes the colors get a little bit distorted as we go from our computer screens to projectors to everything like that. So again, the colors and all that are subject to change and final approval there. That's the existing activities building, which will remain largely as is. It'll continue to serve as as another gym space. In addition, for junior high wrestling, that'll continue to take place in there as well. But the weight room will move to the heart of the building inside the. It'll actually be in what's now the current media center as far as the weight room space. As we come back around here, at this point in time, we're not planning on really making any changes as far as the current busing procedures, as far as where buses pick up and drop off on that side of the school there. Again, as we come back around, so a lot of the space within that existing high school building then will be again repurposed and renovated for their new uses as a part of the new school there. It's probably tough to make out here on the screen a little bit, but these would be the new science labs there with their new the new windows there for the natural daylighting. And then coming back around on C Street, you can kind of see how that's the new gym beyond there. Kind of, again, want to make sure that we're tying this together here so that it looks like a comprehensive building and design, everything like that, with the addition and the existing building. Probably the ones that are tied in with the wood shop, we would, but we'll still have a loading area for the kitchen space. The kitchen would remain, the main food prep kitchen would remain where it is currently. And then coming back around here to the main entrance. All right, so how much is all this going to cost? It's probably the big question, certainly. And again, I did highlight this here. So our colleagues with Houseman Construction, and they were selected through a competitive RFP process, and they were selected coming out of that. There was a lot of interest in this project. I don't remember how many construction manager firms submitted. I think we had 7. Yeah, I think it was 7 or 8. So we had 7 firms submit, all good firms, and Houseman was the one that was selected. And we just finished a big project with them, another school project, and went very well. So they have put together then a cost estimate that we've worked with them on, and the all-in cost is $29.9 million, which that includes, there's bond issuance fees, design engineering, of course, insurance, and then some contingency, and that's all in that $29.9 million, because I'm guessing somebody's going to ask about, well, have you thought about, material prices are really going up, and there's delays with getting materials, and on the cost side, I feel confident that Houseman has appropriate contingencies in there for accommodating the market that we're in. Now, if something crazy were to happen, we maybe can't cover every single scenario, but I think as far as reasonable inflation and things like that, I'm confident that Houseman has that included in there. And then the targeted construction completion, we're looking at the fall of 2023, again, with material delays and things like that. I know Houseman's gonna, they're gonna work their very hardest to deliver on that timeline there as far as a potential move-in date and completion for the project. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tobin Buchanan with First National capital markets, and he's going to talk about the financial information and the impact on the taxpayer. Is that back live? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. Tobin Buchanan with First National Capital Markets out of Kearney, Nebraska. My role in this process is as municipal advisor, which really entails helping look at historical and current budget and tax information, look at how this project coming into the budget would look over the years and tax impact. And so tonight, that's my goal, is to walk you through a few slides to make sure you have that foundational knowledge yourself, and then can look at the project and how it would impact you individually as a taxpayer. One of the questions that the committee talked about and that they were hearing from the public is giving a clear understanding of how the current bond that the board is paying on will be coming off, and how this new bond would be coming on and the overall impact of that. So that's what this slide does. The elementary bond is scheduled to have its final payment in December of 2023. So there is another fiscal year that need to be that about 4.5 cent levied on the taxes to pay that off. What we can do with this new money bond coming on is structure it around that a little bit so that there's only an 11-cent increase initially, and then as that bond comes off going forward, that's where we get to that 11-cent net tax levy that we'll talk about in more detail here in a few slides. But that's the timing. The reason that some boards look at doing something like that is there just is maybe too much of a cost to wait for a couple years before starting down a road like this. And so you really can navigate that by structuring a little bit and moving forward if it makes sense to do so. One of the things we looked at historically, we wanted to make sure that people understood or had the opportunity to see is how the board and administration has really tried to become more efficient, be very aware of the impact on the taxpayer. So this really focuses on historical information on the general fund tax asking. So you can see at a high point several years ago, 2016-17 fiscal year, where the tax asking was about 9.7 million. And then the last 4 years, the board has continued to ask the same exact tax request of just over 8.6 million. So as valuations go up and down a little bit, the tax levy does move, but a lot of times it's good really to focus on the actual dollars that the board is asking from the public. So that 8.6 million is what the tax request has been for you the past 4 years. So you look at that over time, the last 4 or 5 years, pretty significant, nearly 5 million less in taxes have been requested since that high point in 16-17. On the flip side, on the expenditure side, and this is definitely part of the story, this is what the overall expenditures have been, the budget of expenditures over the past several years. So I think the point here is that operationally, the board of administration has tried to become more and more efficient to get the best bang for your dollar, but as was touched on earlier, that facility need still kind of hangs out there as a separate issue and a separate pot of money as far as operating a district. So the bond amount was shared by Jacob. We are looking, part of my job is to look at what current bond market rates are and take that into account over a certain amount of time, certain project amount over a certain amount of time at a certain interest rate, and then look at what that would require for an annual payment to be made on the bonds, and then how that would impact the taxpayers. So we're looking at a 25-year bond issue. Right now, the current interest rates on that length of a bond are around 2%. That's preliminary. That's kind of where we're at today. And so when you take that amount of a bond over that length of time at that rate, an average annual principal and interest payment is just over $1.5 million. So when you look at your total valuation across your district, in order for that amount of dollars to come in each year to make that payment, there would have to be a bond levy of 16 cents. And that's at this point in time. So that's all we can really look at is where we're at today. So if all those assumptions are true, then the board must levy 16 cents for the bond payment alone. There's more to that story. We're talking about a net levy impact, so I'll move into that. So you've seen on some of the materials that have gone out and some of the social media posts, really what's been highlighted is an 11-cent net tax impact. I touched on that a little earlier, but I just want to make very clear and give a clear picture of where that 11 cents comes from. So this last fiscal year, this current one, 21-22, the general fund levy was put in place by the board during the September budget hearing. The general fund is the dollars that are generated to run the district, to operate. The other funds that are available to address building needs are what's called the special building fund and then a bond fund if a district has a bond. So the top line is what the tax request and the levy was set at this year for a total levy of just under 90 cents. We talked a little bit about how the old bond goes off and the new one comes on. Once we're through that initial structuring period and going forward, if the general fund stays about the same, that tax asking has been the same for the last 4 years. It's not a guarantee, it's not a for sure thing, but that has been a goal and will continue to be a goal, I assume. We can look at the general fund as kind of being unchanged. What would happen is a 16-cent bond fund would be in place, and the old bond fund would go away, and the current building fund could be reduced a little to come to that 11-cent net levy impact. So that's how we walk through that. That's how we get to that 11-cent number. So what does 11 cents mean? We have some tables here just to help kind of outline some general benchmarks. If you live in town, you own residential property, or if you are an ag producer and you have land and also homes and things like that. This table is just to kind of help show you approximately what that impact would be. So 11 cents is 11 cents per $100 of value that you have personally. So if you live in a $100,000 house, an 11-cent impact means you're going to pay an extra $110 a year toward this project. And then the ag land tables, we took some averages of assessed value on irrigated, dry, and grassland. And we get that from a Department of Revenue report, and just showing the impact of the 11 cents on some of those averages. About just under $3.50 an acre irrigated, and so on. The only way to really calculate your personal impact is to have your valuation and take it times 0.0011, that 11 cents, and that'll tell you what the impact will have on you personally. So all these things, everything you've heard tonight have been a part of a conversation and discussion and planning process over the past several months and over a year. Some of the financial considerations I just wanted to finish with or point out that I think have been important is what I touched on before, that getting efficient operationally has been a priority and has reduced the tax request significantly over the past several years. The facility need is still out there. Talked about why not just save up each year and try to tackle these things, and so we often model what it looks like to use the building fund to generate some dollars each year, and what that looks like as construction costs go up, as you save up and wait to address needs. When you put that all together, sometimes the bond issue at a low rate just makes better fiscal sense and allows the board to address issues now. We looked at, before COVID, interest rates on this size issue would have been about 1% higher. So if you think we might be going back up to those levels and rates are starting to tick up, to go back up to even 1% in interest rate increase if we were to wait or do this later, would actually have about a $5 million interest impact on this size of project over 25 years. So, you know, rates are at a point right now that at least more dollars are going toward the project than toward interest. And then finally, again, I touched on it. The reason boards consider bonds, it allows them to get the dollars now to address their needs, lock in a low rate, and protect from that construction increase over the years.
You know, one of the things that when we were doing our community groups is I think we were all kind of shocked just to kind of see how the classrooms had changed from when we all attended school. You know, so up here is, I'm not sure which clicker moves these things
I'll do
here.
it. I'll do it.
You want to do it?
Yep.
Okay. So I think this here is an example of the science classrooms and things like that. In the community tour you went through and you saw them, we kind of had antiquated workstations. You had gas lines that came in that were broken, didn't work, drains that didn't work. You didn't have any type of exhaust for safety. Things that if you own a business that you'd have to have for your employees. We don't have those things for our kids now. So that allowed us to be able to change those. One of the things besides and the reason why probably that last slide was there first, and I didn't talk about it before, but the community members did kind of prioritize what was first. So science, ag, things like that went there. Performing arts obviously is a big need. We're standing in the Performing Arts Center / gym / whatever that we talked about. So this does allow us to address some of those things. You know, on the tour we learned that the lights here were so bad that one student permanently damaged his eyesight last year from having these shine down. The audio up there, just this year my daughter's in a play. They were trying to figure out how do we get our CD music back to cassette so that way we could try to do some audio things. This allows for a performing arts facility so that way these kids can, you know, learn their craft, go on to college, maybe have other careers and things like that. I think Tim's son Isaac would have benefited real good from this, where he's now doing that for school. This is the real big thing. Not everybody needs college anymore. So we're trying to figure out how to prepare our kids, our students to go into workforce. So we can go into here, obviously in our area, agriculture is huge. That class has changed. So many of the communities around us are bringing livestock into their classroom, obviously with their shops, welding, things like that. Those are skills that are needed on the farm today that maybe weren't always there, along with I think I heard one thing they were talking about drone classes, all the other technology that's just used today that wasn't before. So that's one of the things that we'd really like to highlight and try to get to, so that way we feel like we're pushing our students into the future.
So this last section here, and if you go to buildbo.com, we have a section where we have frequently asked questions. These questions have come up multiple times when we were doing the planning phase, and some of them have come up when we've went out to different groups and talked about different things. So I'm going to walk through a few of these projects. One of the questions that comes up all the time is this an athletic project versus an academic project? So what we did here was we went through the budget, and approximately 15% of the budget could be considered an athletic project. So if somebody was to talk to you on the street that says there's a lot of athletic stuff that's built into there, you know, the real answer is about 15% of that space could be considered athletic. But on the flip side of that, all those athletic spaces are being used as classroom spaces each and every day. So when you get to our new gym, you get to the weight room, all those different things will be used as classroom spaces as well as athletic spaces. Does this bond include needs or wants? I think Chris touched on this a couple times. Jacob touched on it, I touched on the tour. We've had a lot of different things that we went through with community members' needs versus wants. The project was initially bigger. We've kind of addressed some of those things and broken down into what we feel is a significant project for us that fits all the needs that we need, as you can look through here with some of the different things. Safety and security improvements are included in the project. We talked about this on the tour if you're with us. The ability to have everybody under one roof. Our kids won't be going outside into the weight room anymore. For games, our fans won't have to travel across the parking lot to go into games. ADA accessibility, we have a couple wheelchair-bound kids that are in elementary that'll be coming to the middle school, high school in the next couple years. We'll address some of those needs. And anytime you get into the workspaces of metals, welding, woods, the space and running into each other while you're operating some of the equipment is definitely a safety concern that we feel that we've addressed in all these designs. What if land values drop in the future? Again, Tobin mentioned it. We try not to focus as a board on the overall levy, and we try to focus more on how much is it going to cost each and every year, the bottom line. Because to be honest, we could do everything in our power as a board to cut down costs, and if valuations would drop, our levy naturally is going to go up asking for the same amount of money. And in return, it could be the opposite. We could spend a lot of money, valuations increase, we ask for the same amount, it looks like our tax levy dropped, and we did such a spectacular job, and that's really not true. So we try to focus mainly on the bottom line figure instead of the tax levy itself. What is the breakdown property versus ag land or district? We've heard this a lot. It comes up at every conversation piece that we have that says ag land pays for everything at the school. The people that live residential don't have to pay for anything. Well, to be honest, the valuations in 2017, ag land was 55% of our makeup of our school district. Today, it's made up of 47% of our valuation. So over the last 4 to 5 years, ag land has really dropped in valuation 8% for our district, and that 8% has gone on the residential owners here in town. Now, do ag land providers pay more in taxes because they have more? Of course they do, but when it comes to the breakdown of how we get to our valuation numbers through the state and how we set our tax levy, for this year it's 52% to 47%. A question we get asked a lot is using Mid-Plains Community College campus instead of our own facility. So we've broke down some different times, especially when it comes to the welding that we have over there. We don't have an instructor that can teach those classes, and Mid-Plains doesn't provide an instructor for us to teach those classes. So if we were to have welding classes over there, our instructor would be in charge of teaching those classes. Therefore, if he's over there at Mid-Plains, we wouldn't be able to teach the classes that he's teaching here on campus that our other kids are interested in. Some of you may ask, well, you're taking classes at Mid-Plains now. Mid-Plains has hired an English instructor that teaches all of our English classes that are dual credit. We don't hire the English instructor. Mid-Plains is actually responsible for that. And then our CNA classes, the hospital actually hires an instructor to teach the CNA classes for our kids. So do we think we can utilize the campus a little bit more than we've used in the past? Certainly, but we don't feel like that's something we can do at each and every period of the day. What if the bond fails? We talked about it a little bit in the pamphlet, but we can run another bond issue in 6 months depending on what this one looks like. The board can increase the special building fund, all those different things. We really, to be honest with you, have never sat down and decided to make a plan B. We feel like this is an excellent and awesome opportunity for our kids, and we're hoping this plan A works. But certainly we will go back through if this doesn't work out and sit down as a board and start to do some planning for the future. But we feel like we've already taken steps to get to plan A That was Plan B. Plan C, by cutting some different things out of the project. If you were along on the tour, we talked about initially trying to repurpose this area into a practice space instead of tearing it down. We've tried to determine if a CTE center would fit into our activities building, and all those things came back to be not cost effectively as we move through as a district. So we're hoping November 9th it passes, but if it doesn't, we'll sit down as a board and we'll really get to work on what we need to do next. And then important information as you leave tonight, but last day to register if you want to vote is October 29th, and you need to do that in person. Polling place will be at the Broken Bow Municipal Center, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then again, like I said before, informational website, we have buildbowtogether.com, and then we're constantly posting things on our Facebook page. If you get an opportunity, look at those. With that, we're done. We will let you ask all the questions that you want to ask.
If you're not registered, where do you register if you're not registered to vote?
Go to the courthouse and you can get registered to vote at the courthouse.
At what office?
At the courthouse.
What office?
City clerk? County clerk.
Should also be the
Sorry.
It's on the third floor now.
County clerk on the 3rd floor.
Thank you.
They got an elevator.
Thank you.
So at this time, if you guys have any questions, if you want to shout them out, that's fine. If you need the mic, come up and ask them. But any of the questions, and we'll kind of pop around the tables to different people that can answer the different questions. Maybe there are none.
I have a question. I need a little bit of a geographical lesson. The weight room is a separate building at this time?
The weight room currently is on the north side of the AB building, correct?
And it will be retained or torn down?
That space is just going to be an open space. The weight room will move to the existing media center that's over in the high school right now.
So the building will remain?
Yeah, the weight room is part of the AB building.
Oh,
The activities building right now, if you're on the tour, we talked about, that's kind of our JV space when we have varsity competitions. That space will be utilized more as a practice space in the future. The JV space would be the existing competition gym we're in now, and then the varsity space would be the new gym space that is part of the project. Yeah.
Has there been, excuse me, has there been any analysis of like the external benefits that would happen to the community? So, for example, events that would be hosted at the school, or families that may be on the edge of wanting to move here and have the new school be their decision of why they want to move here. Kind of the added benefits for the community of building this project.
I'm going to let Tim address that because some of the fine arts things that.
Sure. So availability for the Fine Arts Center, for the auditorium, we've all talked about that, the availability to bring outside entertainment, speakers, performers into the area for the community, even for, if it works within the school schedule, for outside group within the community to use that for a production or a meeting room. And then, what was the second part you said?
Well, just families that may be trying to make the decision to move to Broken Bow,
Sure.
and the school would be a big benefiting factor of them making that decision.
That's another part that a lot of us in the business community in Broken Bow and surrounding area have talked about, the employees that we hire each and every day. I know every time that I've moved in life, I've always pulled up and looked at the school district. You can see how it's analyzed, see if it's a strong school district. And a lot of times the employees we get into our community and the people that are moving into our community make decisions on the school and what's available. This program that we put together, they've done a great job of presenting here. It's been a lot of work, thought out well and put together, and I really think it does a great job of providing reasonable opportunity for our young adults as they go through this school system to be really involved in the businesses that we have surrounding our area. So it's a big draw for outside people and also for our own kids to learn through this system to stay involved in our own operations.
What's the anticipated life or growth for this new project? How many kids at maximum, for example, would it max at?
You gonna shout it out?
So that's about 5 extra classrooms if you take everything into account with the new stage ones and everything.
I believe the question was, as far as the plan that's been set forth here, how much additional room for growth, shall we say? So I was looking through my notes. I just wanted to make sure before the meeting here tonight to just make sure I had my facts in my head straight. And I was looking back, and we had a meeting many months ago, and we were talking about that very question. And so the plan and the target, the goal, and I'm confident that we have that covered with this plan that we've presented to you here tonight, is to accommodate for additional 200 plus students. Now, that wouldn't necessarily all be in the high school, of course. I mean, you're going to have some of those additional 200 would be in kindergarten or second grade and 8th grade, 9th grade. So that's what has been discussed as far as accommodating additional growth and more students. I don't know if Mr. Toby, if you want to add anything to that, or any of the board members, but that was what I remember. We actually kind of discussed it a little bit earlier today, even so.
You're adding 200 out of, that's 50 a class.
No, it said that the 200 potentially would be spread out. It could be, across the grades K through 12. It wouldn't be all in the high school, is what I'm saying. So if you take that, I mean, they're not all going to be distributed evenly, but there would be additional students that we would accommodate in the district, is what I'm saying.
But isn't this junior high and high school then?
Right.
It's not kindergarten and...
Well, I'm saying when you look at the number district-wide, 200 plus, and then there would be additional, so depending on how that would break down, we would have that covered with this here.
I think the easiest way so shop as an example we talked about, right now we can probably fit 10 kids in there comfortably. When we build a new shop, we'll be able to fit 20 to 25 kids in there comfortably, if that makes a little more sense. I don't know, district-wide no, not 200 students just in the high school. But there is built-in growth with all those different spaces that we have available.
Is there a number, like a classroom that maybe seats, I don't know, 15 now? Will it then seat 20 in the new build or something like that?
Anything that's CTE related will fit way more kids into those spaces. As far as classroom space, we don't envision that those spaces are going to be renovated much, besides, lighting and those types of things. But we do have additional classroom spaces to grow into, as Jacob alluded to earlier. That will be +2 or +3 when it comes to actual classroom spaces.
So your English classroom, as it stands, may not be any bigger right now, but you have space to move into in the future.
Correct. Our English classrooms that are existing in the high school will not be any bigger. We'll be adding 2 additional classrooms.
I mean, there's other things too. I mean, we could go on and on here, but as far as the existing science labs, those are very large rooms there, and as we build in the 4 new science labs, those 2 existing science labs, those are going to be general purpose, or like one's going to be business, and so those are going to be spaces as far as equivalent spaces today. Those are going to be much larger. So Is every single classroom going to be larger than it is today? No, but the spaces that we're touching, those will be larger than their equivalent spaces. So same thing I can say with band, vocal music, those will be bigger than the existing rooms are today.
Go ahead.
Jack Lindstrom here in Broken Bow. If you've ever, probably addresses this table here, if you've ever built anything new, about what percent override you'd have above and above your budget, it's usually like 3%. Is that, do you have a fudge factor like if you have an override?
I can address that. Again, Steve Teal with Hausman Construction. Somebody alluded to it earlier, but within this overall $29.9 million budget, we've got contingencies built in. So I just did some rough numbers. They're divided into different buckets. There's a construction contingency, a material escalation contingency. Somebody mentioned the current volatile market that everybody's probably aware of. And then we also have an owner contingency for the school district to make tweaks as we go along and they can see the finished space and need to change something slightly. So the total of all those is about 7 to 8% of the overall budget. Now that said, as Jacob and his team get into design and we get to a certain point, we as Hausman will agree to a GMP or a guaranteed maximum price. So basically at that point we're guaranteeing the project comes in for that budget or less. So that's sort of the process that we'll go through. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
We've heard all sorts of stories about supply chain issues and not being able to get materials or materials not being manufactured. You kind of alluded to contingencies earlier. What happens if you don't get steel or you don't get the carpet, you don't get whatever?
Sure, that's certainly something we've been dealing with. And one of the real benefits or added values to the process that the district's chosen to go with in construction management at risk is it gets us on board obviously much earlier than when construction starts to be able to anticipate those types of things and plan in advance. So already we're talking about material availability and trying to guide and make suggestions to Jacob and the school district on what some of the right choices are to make. And as we get into design, we'll make certain recommendations on bidding certain things out earlier so that we can allow for a longer lead time to get materials here. That's how we try to address and mitigate those types of things.
I might just add ever so briefly too that we've already had quite a bit of discussion with Hausman Construction and the school district as far as using some varied structure types. For instance, potentially using tilt-up precast panels on the new competition gym, going with more traditional block and brick for the auditorium, and then for the CTE spaces, potentially pre-engineered metal building for that part of the building there, and then splicing in here and there more conventional steel building, so we don't have all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
I think, I mean, not just in this market that we're in right now, but I think the other key is we're working across the state, across the region. I think the other key is just knowing where we're at and knowing what the local talent and skill level is so we can kind of design to that. Not only to address availability concerns, but also to obviously keep as much work local to Broken Bow and to Custer County as we can. So that's also definitely part of the discussion.
So, project timeline, you said it was fall of 2023 was the completion date, is that correct? So if it was to pass, what was the beginning construction?
We'd want to start as early next year as we can. There's a couple factors. Obviously, one is school. We need to work with Darren Toby and his staff to make sure we understand the areas that are available for us to get started in before school's out. And two is when spring actually gets here and when frost is out of the ground. So I'd anticipate hopefully we find a way to start something in March or maybe early April, just depending on when spring shows up.
yeah, we'd want to take advantage of as much time on the front end as we can, because obviously that affects the back end.
No other questions? Everybody's dying to get home to watch Nebraska volleyball. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out. There's another opportunity on Monday, November 1st. We'll have a 5:30 tour here at the middle school, and then a 7 o'clock question and answer session, kind of like tonight, over at the Cobblestone Hotel. So if you have any questions after this that you're too shy to ask, feel free to come up here. We'll stick up here for 10 to 15 minutes and answer any questions you guys have. Thanks again.